Science proves quality sleep is vital to your mental, emotional, and physical health. The Sleep Number 360 smart bed senses your movements and automatically adjusts to help keep you both effortlessly comfortable. And it's temperature balancing, so you stay cool. So you're at your best for yourself and those you care about most. Life-changing sleep, only from Sleep Number. Don't miss our weekend special. Save $1,000 on the Sleep Number 360 Special Edition Smart Bed. Queen, now only $19.99. Ends Thursday. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
WTOP's American Nightmare podcast series, Unknown Subject, is brought to you by Simply Safe. Simply Safe Home Security is different. They keep you safe and help you save. Get 40% off Simply Safe's advanced security system, because at Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. This episode of Unknown Subject is brought to you by Simply Safe. The text message simply said, "Have you heard?" I was standing in my kitchen, having just come back from the gym, when a second text came through. This one said, "Do you know anything? I'm not getting any information." I stood staring at the phone, knowing a third text was about to come through. This one simply said, "Giles died." The sender, who wants to remain anonymous, had no other information, only that Giles Warwick was found dead in his jail cell at around 8 that morning. The sender wanted to know what I knew. It was Saturday morning, November 19th. At that point, I knew nothing, but I knew who to call. I dialed a few law enforcement sources who confirmed what I had just been told. Giles Daniel Warwick, the man suspected of being the Potomac River Rapist, the man who had maintained his innocence for 3 years and was about to go on trial, died by suicide. He hanged himself. So many thoughts went through my mind. Why now? He was paying a private attorney. Was he worried about an upcoming hearing, the one in which Judge Milton Lee would rule on whether prosecutors would be allowed to tell the jury about the 6 rape charges he was facing in Montgomery County? As I stood in my kitchen, I thought about all of the people I needed to call. Warwick's death would make news. So I got on the phone with Julia Ziegler. She's the program director at WTOP News Radio and the manager of this podcast, and we agreed I would go on the air with the story as soon as I had double-checked a few facts. I then called Kelly to see what she knew. Kelly told me she had just been searching for my phone number and had just gotten off the phone with Prosecutor Sharon Donovan and Detective Allison DuPuy. In a few words, she said she was shocked, stunned, and angry. She told me she would think about doing an interview, and we agreed to talk later in the day. I then went on the air and broke the story.
And we have some breaking news this hour. WTOP is learning a man who FBI dubbed as the Potomac River Rapist has been found dead in a D.C. jail cell. Host of WTOP's podcast, American Nightmare, Paul Wagner, joins us live now with the latest. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about what we know about his death?
Sure, Luke. We got word about an hour ago from a source that Giles Warwick... For me, Warwick's death was more of a surprise than anything. I just kept thinking, why now? Why fight the charges for 3 years and then, just before the trial is about to begin, take your own life? In a way, it was a relief. I was not looking forward to covering the trial for a number of reasons. Some are personal, but I suppose the main reason would be this. I had the facts of this case in my head for 2 years, and it really had become a burden. I was very proud of the 7 episodes we had produced, but now I could let it go. What I know is this. According to 2 people familiar with the investigation, Giles Warwick was last seen alive at around midnight and was found hanging by bed sheets inside his cell about 8 hours later. Based on the condition of his body, investigators believe he had been dead for several hours. He did not leave a note. After talking it over with her husband that day, Kelly decided she did want to do an interview. You may recall Kelly told her story in episode 2, how at 18 years old in 1991, she was raped while babysitting several small children in a rural part of Montgomery County, Maryland. Police say DNA linked Warwick to the crime. So I set up a Zoom and we talked for about 15 minutes.
Just a couple questions. You ready?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not ready. Okay. But yeah, I guess I have to be. Okay.
All right. You got a phone call this morning from was it Allison that called you or was it Sharon?
Both actually.
Both? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me what that was like.
Well, to be honest with you, I was expecting the phone call just to be an update on how things are going with the case. And so it was a shock. And, as they both mentioned, they've been wonderful, both of them, with me through this whole situation. But they were like, there's not any real easy way to just say this, so we're going to tell you. And they just, said that he was dead. And then that's when the shock started.
What was your reaction?
Obviously shocked at first. Just speechless like I am now, just trying to talk about it again. There's so many emotions that go through your mind in that flash. Just sort of like, wow, I can't believe this is happening.
I think one of the toughest things for you was that you were on the edge of your seat waiting to know whether or not you were going to testify.
Yeah.
And so you must have had all these emotions built up as it was, thinking that you might have to go on a witness stand and look this guy in the face. So, and then getting that call. So
yeah,
your emotions must be all over the place.
Yeah, that hearing was scheduled for Monday. So, like I said, I was just expecting an update from Sharon and Allison. And when they said that, he was dead, it just makes you feel like, wow, like this was just such a selfish thing to do. For him, why didn't he, if he's going to do this, why didn't he do this 3 years ago when he was captured? He put his family through this. I have anger at everything that Allison and Sharon and everyone has done, involved in this case, all the hard work for 3 years that has gone into this. And so I feel anger, and then I feel compassion for his family that have to go through this because they don't deserve this. But then I get angry at myself because I'm like, why am I compassionate for someone? I don't know them. But, I don't wish ill will on anyone. And I think, for Christine's family that they didn't get that justice. At least I'm alive and I have a family and I have children and I was able to live my life. And he didn't take that from me. And as much as I wanted that day in court, it's just going to be a different way of closure. And I'm just going to have to process the anger and the compassion and the anger and the frustration. And I'm just going to have to go through those emotions. And I have a supportive husband and a family that are amazing, and I know I'll be okay. But yeah, I feel bad for everybody involved in this situation because he just, he's a coward. I don't know what else to say. He did the cowardly thing. He should have stood up for what he did, take responsibility, and instead, at the last minute, he took his life. And, that's a tough thing.
He's maintained his innocence through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But were you convinced that they had the right guy and that there's no doubt in your mind that he was the person that attacked you when you were
without
a teenager?
a doubt. I just recently heard his voice for the first time since my attack. And, some things never leave your head. And that's something that sadly, even though he's gone now, I'll probably never be able to get his voice out of my head. But if there was no DNA, beyond a shadow of a doubt, his voice is something I will never forget. And it was very ironic that I literally just heard a recording of his voice last night, and then this happened today. But yeah, he did it. He wasn't man enough to stand up, and take responsibility, and that's really sad. But if I can do anything through this all, and this last sort of word is just speaking up for his victims, for Christine. I didn't know her, but I can't imagine what her family's gone through, and the other victims like myself that went through similar things that I went through. Hopefully everyone can find closure. It's not going to be easy, but it's just a different way to try to process this. And ultimately, he's gone. It's done.
I also heard from Joe Madano, the Montgomery County detective who doggedly pursued the Potomac River Rapist for years without success. He told me in an email, "It would have been an interesting trial to follow," he said, "but this is probably best for the victims." What a coward. I'm generally not in favor of the death penalty, but this is a just conclusion. Did you know that property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike over the winter? That's why now is the best time to secure your home with award-winning home security. Simply Safe is the home security system I recommend to everybody. Make it your resolution to start the new year with greater peace of mind and safety for you and your family. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get higher priority police response. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/nightmare. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off your order with interactive monitoring. That's simplysafe.com/nightmare. There's no safe like Simply Safe. As with any major case, there are stories left untold until there is a resolution, like a plea deal or a verdict, or in this case, a death. And how long was the drive back?
From South Carolina?
Yeah.
I don't know, about 7 or 8 hours, I think.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's therapeutic.
That's Detective Steve Smogoreski, the bike cop turned genealogy expert who helped detectives narrow down the search for the unknown subject. I was asking Smugs, as he's known, about that long drive from South Carolina back to the Montgomery County Crime Lab with the envelope containing a sample of Giles Warwick's DNA. But first, let's go back to the beginning of his involvement in the case. I have interviewed Smugs before about other cases he's solved, but he wasn't allowed to talk about how he found Giles Warwick until there was a conviction or some other outcome. With Warwick now dead and the case officially over, I got permission to speak with Smugs again. This time, we met in a room inside police headquarters in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Smugs says a decision was made in late 2018 or early 2019 to send the unknown subject's DNA to Parabon Nanolabs, the private lab in Virginia that assists law enforcement with investigations involving forensic genealogy.
Well, we sat on a conference call with DC, with Todd and our detectives and the Parabon staff, and they gave us some of the possible shared matches with our suspect.
And what did you think when you looked at those shared matches? Because you've worked at a lot of other cases where there would be distant relatives. How close were they on this one?
There were a couple that were fairly high and fairly close, and then there were a couple in the medium level and such.
And you thought that you'd have a good shot at finding them with the information that you had, or finding this guy?
Yes. I think when at the initial look, yes, I thought it was very solvable to do real quick.
But it wasn't as quick as you might think. This time it took months before investigators had a much clearer idea on who they were after. So if you can sort of zero in, though, on when did you feel like you were coming close to the person you were really after?
Well, that really didn't come by just doing the traditional, I sit and I start to trace the family. We had to go and do some different interviews with different family members out there in different branches, and ultimately rule out certain branches. We had to, ask a few people if they would submit a sample, and ultimately we were able to rule out a couple of the lines that looked good for us in the beginning, and then we started to focus in on these two lines, and ultimately through more research and interviews, we were able to rule out the one and come down to this one section of the family tree.
We just kind of were at the point where we knew we had to go and talk to people.
That's Montgomery County Detective Allison DePoy, one of the detectives, along with Todd Williams, who closed the case. I also got permission to speak with both of them the same day I talked to Smuggs. You'll hear from Todd Williams a little later.
We could do as much as we could do with samples and internet and things like that, but we knew we were at a point where we had to go talk to people and either get an elimination swab or get more information about this family. As we're looking at, these individuals who fit in the genealogical place where we were, where we believed our suspect was, there was just no obvious choice. And it was like a square peg in a round hole. You just didn't have... It wasn't a standout that we thought, oh, this is our guy. So we kind of felt like we have no other choice than to go talk to the members of this family and see if there's somebody that we're missing, or is there some history that we're missing.
Even with all the leads generated by Smuggs, the detectives still didn't know who their unknown subject was, but they had a list of possible family members. The plan was to head out and interview as many of the list of family members as they could, all on the same day. It was November 7th, 2019.
And that's when we went and we just kind of divvied up the list of relatives, and Todd took a couple and we took a couple, and we found somebody that was at home, and he was talking to us. And it was an interesting interview. It was a very emotional interview. I think he was kind of telling us his life story as we were asking about the family, and it did kind of come out as an aside. It was kind of like, oh, and there was this guy that, then everybody talked about was part of our family. And once we started looking into that subject, Giles Warwick, and putting his name into law enforcement databases and public databases, the pieces started falling together very quickly.
Within days, the detectives had zeroed in on Giles Warwick and began making plans to get a sample of his DNA. As you know from listening to this podcast, when the detectives went down to South Carolina, they already had a warrant for his DNA. But when they realized under state law they would have to give Warwick the documents spelling out the bulk of their evidence, they came up with another plan. Here's Allison DePoy again and Detective Todd Williams.
In Maryland, we can apply to seal the warrant, and you have, I believe it's 30 days to have a sealed affidavit. So you don't hand over your entire, all of your probable cause in the warrant. When we were dealing with the Horry County detective and his sergeant, that didn't seem to be capable. We weren't able to do that in South Carolina. So like Todd said, we would have to have handed over the entire warrant, including our probable cause. So it was something we were kind of working, like I said, we really, it was about a 3-day, we made this plan and got all of our people involved and coordinated over a very short time. So we were still working with South Carolina to try to figure out if that was possible. And we learned, I believe, like Sunday, that it wasn't going to be possible to seal it. So we had to just change gears, and we wanted to talk with Todd before we, made that decision. So it was evolving as we were going.
Because that's one of the moments in that interview in the house. It's sort of like, it seemed like you were both on the edge of your seat saying, is it okay? Can we get a swab from you? And it was like this, like almost seconds ticking, like, is he going to do it? Right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we wanted to do it that way to protect our hand, protect our information. If he had elected to say, no, I don't consent to this, then we would have switched to the second plan, which would have been execute the warrant. And it wasn't what I would have preferred. And I think that we all agreed that it would have been better to not give him all the information at that point. But yeah, I don't think it was like that. I think it was more like making sure that he was aware that it was consensual and voluntary. It wasn't like on the edge of the seats, please give us this. It was just like, you have a choice. You don't have to do it, but if you will, it's easy.
In episode 7, you heard a portion of that first encounter with Giles Warwick, the detectives knocking on the door of his Conway, South Carolina home, the recorder tucked away inside one of Detective DePoy's pockets.
So we're down here. We've got Detective Scales here with Horry County. We're from Montgomery County, Maryland. At least I am. Mm-hmm. And Detective Williams here is from D.C. And we just wanted to talk to you just about some things, way back in the day, things like that. So did you ever live in Maryland? How long have you been down here in South Carolina?
I've been here almost a year now.
Almost a year. Okay. Where'd you live prior to that?
In Frederick County.
In Frederick. Okay.
After explaining why they were there, Giles Warwick allows the detectives to swab his mouth with a Q-tip, collecting DNA they now suspected would close a 28-year-old cold case.
When I walked out of that house, I felt pretty confident we had the right guy. But then over the course of the day, I think you go back and forth. I was, your emotions are like, we got him or we didn't. Where do we go? Back to the drawing board if this isn't him. But I think ultimately, as the day progressed, I was feeling like we were going to get, the person we thought it was.
While they were waiting, Smuggs was driving the sample back to the lab in Montgomery County.
Well, the trip back up here, it was a lot of things going through my mind, but I will say that driving all the way from there to here that day, we hit all kinds of weather. We hit sun from down there, and then we hit the rain. Then we hit a little bit of snow through Virginia, and a little bit of, I think there was some sleet and hail going on. So, I kind of had the tune going on in the back of my head, rain, sleet, and snow. I'm like the U.S. Mail, all while the detective beside me was, he was fast asleep, just enjoying the ride.
So you were driving?
I was driving, yep.
And you're saying to yourself, don't crash the car.
I was saying, I want to get this back safely.
While Smuggs was driving, Todd and Allison were anxiously awaiting the result of the test at the lab. Keep in mind, a surveillance team had its eyes on the house in Conway in case Warwick decided to leave. The detectives had told him it would likely take weeks for the results to come back, knowing it was really just hours.
We knew they were close. We kind of were getting little updates like, all right, we're finalizing the report, and then it has to go through approval, and that can take some time. So we knew it was coming, and it was just a matter of getting that absolute positive, yes it is, or no it's not. And we were all together, and we had finished eating, and we were just kind of waiting to hear that, and to finally get that phone call was pretty. It was exciting, for lack of a better word, just to know that like all of this work, all of the years of hard work that all these detectives have put in here, and for the victims, that we have an answer right now.
It was a long time coming. It was really, like it was unbelievable that we finally got the match, because, and like what I was saying earlier, is that there had been a lot of samples that we had taken from people over the years, and we're like, okay, hoping, and they were excluded. And then it's like the same kind of thing, like you're anticipating it, you're hopeful, you think it's going to be him, but you don't want to be disappointed, and then it turns out it is him. And so it was just it was hard, it was really hard to believe that it was, we finally know who it is.
Back in Montgomery County, Smuggs had gone home to get some sleep. He only learned of the match in a late-night phone call.
I remember taking the call and walking out my front door, and I remember my reception at my house isn't all that great. So when I walked out the front door, it was to get a clear phone message, and the detective on the other line had said that it was a match, and that he was going to get the charging documents and such, and I just kind of was in disbelief, I was, because this was probably the longest one we worked to that point, it didn't set in. It didn't set in right.
Well, it couldn't have been that matter of fact, was it? Wasn't he excited?
Oh, he was excited. Yeah, there was a lot of excitement in both tones, but yeah, it didn't set in right away until everybody got back.
But it wasn't over yet. Authorities in South Carolina had to take Warwick into custody, and it didn't go as planned. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up in the ways that you want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life throws at you. I went for help recently when an issue from my childhood came back to haunt me, and it was very helpful to sit and talk with the therapist and just talk it all out and get ideas on how I could deal with it. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/American Nightmare today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/American Nightmare. Down in South Carolina, detectives had settled in for the night. They knew Giles Warwick was their unknown subject, but their plan had been to wait until morning to take him into custody.
Well, the plan was to go at like 6:30 or something in the morning. We were going to do it the same time the next day because they kind of had a sense of his timing. And then it was, we're like, I know I went back to the room and was going to sleep. And then you get this call that there's activity in the house, there's lights on, he's moving back and forth, something's funny, and that it's time to go. And so then, I don't know if I texted you or called you, and everybody was just on the move. And it was, it was kind of like it was a very unexpected, at least what I remember being very unexpected, getting that call in the middle of the night, like, we got to go now.
That must have freaked you out a little bit.
It was a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, the adrenaline really started pumping then because you kind of thought you had a few hours to like go to sleep, all right, recharge, and then we're going. And then you get a phone call and it's like, no, we're going now. And we had to just, make sure we had all of our charging documents, make sure it was in, the system.
We told you in episode 7 how the arrest went down. There was a bit of a scuffle just inside Warwick's front door, and he was then taken outside and placed in handcuffs. Detectives who were assisting Todd and Allison then began searching the house, finding what has been described as the consciousness of guilt letter in the kitchen, a letter in which Warwick apologized to his fiancée, writing, "Missing you, all the mess you are about to go through, I hope you don't hate me. Love you." How long before you saw the letter that he left?
My sergeant, who was at the house doing the search warrant, told me about it and sent it to me. So it was while we were doing the interview with Giles that we learned about it.
And as soon as he saw the letter, Detective Williams asked Warwick about it in the interview after the arrest.
I mean, you don't mention anything like that. It seems like it was a surprise that you were leaving just kind of abruptly, and like, you know, like honestly, like this whole thing, we want to, understand what's going on, and we want to, if possible, save like your family, your, her, everybody, like embarrassment and like the hardship that they're going to go through behind this. And we're willing to do whatever we can do. We're hoping that you're willing to talk to us about what was going on back then and why maybe some of these things were happening. But the reality of this case is that it's there's DNA that links all the cases together that we're talking about. And
my DNA with all of this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, like I said, it's, this is going to be a hard road for you. It's going to be a difficult time for your family.
What'd you think when you read it?
It seemed pretty straightforward and obvious to me, given the circumstances of what was happening, with his behavior going back and forth, doing what he was doing, and then to find that letter, I think it was, to me, it was pretty evident.
Yeah, same, and I think it shows you that somebody who had 28 years to kind of expect this to happen or plan for this. There were a lot of things that he had thought about what he needed to do if this day ever came. And it was clear that he, wanted to make sure his family was taken care of to the best that he could. And, it was kind of, I felt for the family because it wasn't their fault. They had no idea this was coming. And it was, they were another victim of this, man's decisions. And I think that was evident in that letter.
It's not every day that reporters get to hear the entirety of an in-custody interview. Oftentimes, we only hear or see clips, and then it's usually in court. In this case, we've been able to hear every word, and if there was one question I wanted to ask Todd, it was this. In your interview, in the in-custody interview with him, you asked him, you said, how did your DNA end up at all of these places?
I'm not BSing about this, man.
I understand that, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you I did something I didn't do it.
Well, explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
I don't know.
Right. You can't explain it because your DNA is on 10 cases.
There's only two answers. It's either he tells us that it's him, I did it, and whatever the reasons were, or he says no, and the next best thing to him saying it was him would have been, I don't know how it got there. So it's not a denial. That also, like some of these other things, is telling. That could be evidence of his consciousness of guilt there, and that would have been something that could have been brought up at the trial. Is that a jury would have heard that and made their decision about what did that mean? I mean, I can say what I think. Allie can say what she thinks, but it ultimately would have been up to them. And you can conclude what you think, too.
At trial, if Judge Milton Lee had ruled the jury could hear about the 6 rapes Warwick was charged with in Montgomery County, Detective DuPois says 5 of the women were ready to testify. I want to take you back now to episode 1 for a few minutes because there's a voice you have not heard. His name is Bill Brown, and he's a retired lieutenant colonel with the Fairfax County, Virginia Police Force. I told you about Bill in that episode and his role in the investigation into the murder of Christine Mirzayan back in August of 1998. He's the man who saw Christine that night walking along Canal Road and supplied police with a composite sketch of the man he saw walking behind her. Until Warwick's death, Bill thought he was under a gag order, and so he did not respond to my request for an interview. But with Warwick now deceased, Bill reached out, and we agreed to meet down on Canal Road so he could show me exactly where he saw Christine that night.
So we're coming back from Potomac Landing Restaurant, and we've just crossed Key Bridge, and I've gotten off my cell phone to alert my son that we were about 5 minutes out if he wanted to, put the beer cans away or clean up the house, whatever. And we turned left there by what used to be the Exxon station, the Key Bridge Exxon station, or making our way along, Canal Road, which is kind of overgrown with vegetation in places, and the lighting isn't all that good. But we're driving along, and all of a sudden, both of us about simultaneously see this young woman in her, I would guess, mid-20s or so, tall, looking sort of like Isabella Rossellini with a dark page boy haircut and a long strap purse over her right shoulder and a green dress, walking casually along. And my wife and I sort of simultaneously look or say to each other, I don't think not sure I'd be walking along there alone this time of night, under these lighting conditions and everything else. I mean, some of this was just, nonverbal communication. And then, not much further up the road, about where, we conducted our interview, we see an African-American male walking in the same direction as this young woman, and, with a kind of unique attire and all, didn't seem to be in any particular hurry or anything, and we sort of made a mental note of that, or said, oh well, that's kind of odd, and we drove on home, not knowing any suspecting anything else. And then the next thing we knew, the next day at 6 o'clock, we hear on the news that a woman's body's been found in the vicinity of where we'd seen this woman the night before.
What I found interesting is the location on Canal where Bill Brown says he first spotted Christine and the man walking behind her. It was well before the south entrance to Georgetown University, meaning Christine had been followed for about a half a mile before she was dragged into the woods and killed. Bill Brown eventually provided the information for a composite sketch that wasn't released to the public until many months later. A delay that to date defies explanation. The lead detective claimed Brown had gone overseas and was unavailable, but Bill Brown says that's just not true, and he never heard from police until he ran into a D.C. police commander months later at a function and told her about it. The very next day, he was sitting in front of a sketch artist.
And so she's walking me, okay, now describe for me. And I'm just talking, and she's drawing out and talking, and it's like, I don't know, I'll just say an hour and a half later. Honestly, it was not like, does it look like this? She just turns this around. She says, does this look like him? And I was like, oh my God, how close?
She nailed it.
Yeah.
It's impossible to say what help that sketch may have been to the investigation had it been released in the days after Christine's murder. But you may recall when the FBI got involved in 2011 and held that news conference and labeled the person they were after as the Potomac River Rapist, a woman came forward to say she thought she may have also been attacked by the same man in 1996, a claim that turned out to be true when the victim's rape kit was tested for DNA. Throughout the last few episodes of this podcast, you have heard me mention the name Alida. She is the mother of 3 of Giles Warwick's children. After Warwick's death, I offered her another opportunity to comment, but she again declined. Sharon Donovan, the lead prosecutor in the case, also declined to comment, as did Warwick's attorney, Stephen Mercer. In my interviews with Smuggs, Allison, and Todd, I asked each of them what they thought about forensic genealogy. Here's all 3, beginning with Smuggs.
I just want people to know about it, that, it's them out there that are really the true heroes, because without them submitting their DNA into, and opting in to law enforcement, we're not able to do what we do. And, I'm appreciative, so appreciative of all the people that are out there that do that and give us the chance to give closure to these families.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty new to the cold case world. I've only been in the unit for a few years, and working this case was one of my first cases, and using the genealogy was pretty awesome. I think when you have a suspect and you have DNA, it's a needle in a haystack, and when you combine it with the forensic genealogy, it kind of makes a couple smaller haystacks, and you're making smaller pools of people who you're looking at, and you're just honing in on areas that are a little more targeted. And with, between the genealogy and then just the traditional detective work, that's when it combines and you really can build a strong case.
Honestly, it's a game changer. It's something that, I tell the folks at my work, this is the future. It's here, and it's so much is getting resolved because of genealogy and because of these databases and because of people like Smugs, that it's going to change law enforcement. It really is. And, for me, this is what I've been focusing on for the last 3.5 years now is DNA, genealogy, stuff like that. And this was a really big case, obviously, but there are other really important cases as well that we're getting results in because of this technology. It's really incredible.
There's one final person I wanted to talk to for the final episode of this podcast. David Hackos, Christine's husband at the time she was murdered. I talked to David, who lives on the West Coast, about how he found out Giles Warwick had taken his own life just a little more than a week before the trial was set to begin.
It was the lead prosecutor that called me. I can't remember her name.
Sharon Donovan.
That's right. Sharon Donovan. Yeah, exactly. She called me and told me the news, and I was really shocked. I mean, I was kind of mentally preparing myself to face Giles, who I had not, I obviously had never interacted with in the past. So, and that was kind of a scary prospect to be basically in the same courtroom as him. And I was in the process of kind of preparing myself for that. But yeah. And so when I heard that, it was kind of a mixture of shock and relief that I wanted to face him and see him and look him in the eye and all that. But I was also relieved that I didn't have to do that.
And so not getting to look him in the eye and not getting justice for Christine, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate for sure. I would have. I was preparing myself to confront him. Yeah. But obviously, he clearly. I've obviously never met him. I've never interacted with him, but I'm imagining that he clearly was a very messed up person, and I'm assuming that he was. I would have thought that he would have been very haunted by what he had done, right? And that I'm not surprised that he would have committed suicide if he had the chance.
David said he was told he was going to be the first witness at the trial to talk about Christine's life and what she was like, so the jury would be able to get to know who Christine was. With the way the courtrooms are set up in D.C. Superior Court, sitting on the witness stand, David would have been no more than 10 to 15 feet away from Giles Warwick.
I mean, I'm sure I would have just broken down emotionally at that time. I don't know what it would have been like, but I felt like I owed it to Christine to kind of to face him in the end, right? Because she was killed by him in a way where she was powerless to defend herself really against him, and I owed it to her to basically say that no, she's still powerful, and in the end she's going to win.
For David, the thought of returning to Washington, D.C. dredged up a lot of memories. If things had turned out differently, if Christine hadn't been murdered that August of 1998, David was going to move here too. They were going to build a life together. They may have made Washington, D.C. a permanent home. David said he feels as if he's lived two separate lives. The life he had with Christine when they were younger, that was cut short when she was murdered, and the life he has now. A respected scientist on the West Coast, the family he's built there, his wife Lauren and 2 sons. David said he thought of coming back to the East Coast to testify at the trial almost as a pilgrimage.
Like to kind of, I don't know, wrap myself in, to that world that was part of my past, right? Because I do feel in my life that there's like a schism, like a disconnect between that past life and my current life. And it's almost like there's two separate lives. I wanted to go back and kind of be in that previous life and kind of be with Christine and go to all the places in Washington, D.C. that we had gone to during the short time that we were there together, and just kind of, I don't know, be part of that life again. And then, basically go to the courthouse and stand up for Christine.
Yeah.
That was my plan. And I felt like I needed to do that alone, to be able to immerse myself into that previous life. A lot of people wanted to come with me. My mom wanted to come with me. Lauren wanted to come with me. But I felt like I had to do it myself.
Now, with Warwick's death, that pilgrimage of David's won't happen after all. It's not quite how he imagined it. None of it is. Going back to that hot summer in 1998, as I was wrapping up my final conversation with David, he said something that seemed to sum up how this case ended. So the final word belongs to him.
Well, I'm glad that in the end, Christine got her justice. I feel like, he took his own life, but, he knew he was guilty. And I think that's as close to justice as we're going to get in this case.
Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series has been written by me, Paul Wagner, with editorial assistance from Jack Moore, Julia Ziegler, and Craig Schwab. This series would not have been possible without all of the people who agreed to tell their stories. I can't thank them enough. Reporting and production of this podcast was supported by a grant from Spotlight DC, Capital City Fund for Investigative Journalism. For grants, please apply to spotlightdc.org. Our show relies on people like you leaving ratings and reviews on Apple to help us climb the podcast charts and attract new listeners. We hope if you like what you hear, you will take a minute to do so. If you have questions or comments about the show, send us an email through our website, AmericanNightmarePodcast.com. We are also on Twitter and Facebook at AM Nightmare Pod. The music in the show is Ethereal Thoughts by Olive Musique and Steadfast by Moments. And as always, thanks for listening. Did you know that property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike over the winter? That's why now is the best time to secure your home with award-winning home security. Simply Safe is the home security system I recommend to everybody. Make it your resolution to start the new year with greater peace of mind and safety for you and your family. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get high-priority police response. Simply Safe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/nightmare. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off your order with interactive monitoring. That's simplysafe.com/nightmare. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare is here, and so is Mountain Dew. Roger that. Now you can unlock in-game rewards like only Dew can.
Wait, what rewards?
A Dew Operator Skin.
Man, I love Operator Skins.
Dual double XP, and even Call of Duty points.
You're kidding me. Double XP and Call of Duty points? This is incredible. I can't believe it.
Soldier, get a hold of yourself.
Oh, roger that.
Look for specially marked packaging and visit mtndewgaming.com for details and restrictions. Open to U.S. residents 17 plus. Call of Duty points available on 12 and 24 packs and free 28-23.
Hi, I'm Maria.
And I'm Mike. And we're
Team Ready. Black Hills Energy knows your home is where your heart is, so they want you to be ready.
It's all about keeping you safe, prepared, and making your home as energy efficient as possible.
Everything from how to weatherize your home to how to stay safe during extreme weather.
Be ready for anything. Go to blackhillsenergy.com/teamready.